I recently just watched through all of the Alien series in preparation for Alien Romulus, and after the travesty that was Covenant, I'm really glad to see Romulus go back to the alien origins. So, Romulus takes place between the first Alien and its sequel, Aliens. As soon as Romulus started playing, I was immediately in love with how the franchise decided to go back to retro future tech. In Prometheus and Covenant, the Weyland-Yutani ships had so much clean futuristic tech with floating digital overlays that it was hard to justify those two movies as being prequels to Alien. The only way I can keep that canon to myself is by justifying the high tech because the USCSS Prometheus had to house Meredith Vickers, the daughter of Peter Weyland, and was supposed to have the most advanced everything as the most revolutionary spacecraft at the time. The Nostromo is a towing cargo freighter, so of course it wouldn't have all the bells and whistles the Prometheus had. These are facts from each movie that you could use to justify the stark difference in special effects and futuristic tech. Still, the digital screens of the Prometheus and Covenant really threw me out of the franchise lore. Romulus fixes all of this, though, by showing how normal people are living on a colony planet. Just 37 years before the events of Aliens, our main character, Rain Carradine, lives on the planet Jackson Star with her synthetic brother Andy. Rain's parents died from a lung disease as they contracted while working in the mines. We see that Rain also had signed on to work in the mines for Weyland-Yutani, and we actually get a look at what their contract term lengths can look like. I personally really love the detail of seeing how her contract was just about 12,000 hours initially, just under a year and a half, but was extended to 24,000 hours additional, almost 3 years, due to a worker shortage. So, no doubt the shortage was due to people dying of lung disease, since the mines are incredibly toxic and the planet doesn't seem to ever see the sun. The planet's lack of natural light really just added to how hopeless life felt for that colony. The only light we saw throughout Jackson Star was barrel fires lining the dirty streets. The grime of the planet was just so well done, and it communicated just how backwards this community most likely was in the grand scheme of colonies set up by Weyland-Yutani. I mean, Andy was a synthetic Rain's father saved from the dump and repaired on his own. You do what you can here to make ends meet. I could go on and on about the setting of Jackson Star, but I'll move on. We meet Rain's ragtag group of friends? I had the question mark because they don't really seem to be friends except for Rain and her ex-boyfriend Tyler and his sister Kay. Tyler and Kay's cousin Bjorn is just one big trope object with his only personality trait being I hate synths, and ironically, Bjorn's cousin Navarro, who was adopted, is this incredibly skilled pilot who doesn't seem to really have a personality at all. They're just a weird group of kids living on Jackson Star working the mines with the shared goal of leaving that rock. The characters work surprisingly well when all together in the same room, but all of the individual characters are pretty weak. My biggest gripe is probably with Bjorn, who just complains the entire time. He hits that trope of hating Andy and being an incredible dick to him because the synth shut the doors on his mother when an accident required the workers to evacuate in the mines. Bjorn being angry at synths for existing makes sense, seeing as how one left his mother to die, but his continued intense hate towards Andy specifically is pretty ridiculous. I mean, this isn't their first time meeting, which means that Bjorn has just constantly been an asshole to Andy. You would think that with them having known each other for such a long time, Bjorn would have gotten over Andy being a synth, or at least accepted him, because he's not the synth that killed his mother. Bjorn just having this unshakable hate for synths, however, honestly isn't the worst part about his character. The worst part about his character is that he's just poorly written and is just an angry shithead because his mom died. Mommy issues. To be fair, Andy's whole synth character gave me Disney Star Wars vibes for some reason. He was cracking awful dad jokes and was this broken synth who had been rescued and programmed to be good and protective. I think a lot of people forget that synths are given specific directives that they have to follow. They can't stray from that. And there's no real free will with them. They have to do as they're told. That's a whole thing that plays throughout the entire movie when Andy gets another synth's chip inserted to try and figure out what happened on the Renaissance space station. He becomes a normal synth with actual directives. The directives were from a company, sure, but still a normal synth function. Starting fresh into the movie, I liked Andy's character and thought he was really sweet. Then about halfway through, I realized he's just kind of a droid fill-in that we see in Star Wars movies so often rather than an actual synth character we'd seen in previous Alien movies with real personality. He only offers a bit of narrative drive and then loses it all again when he gets thrown into a wall and seizes up again in one of his broken synth convulsions. I keep reiterating this, but the characters are really just weak, and if it wasn't for the driving force of the movie and the horrors they found, they would offer nothing to the story. Romulus offers her little thieves through the Renaissance space station that's actually quite impressive, and I'm really sad we didn't get to see more of its interior. It's broken up into two parts, the Romulus section and the Remus section. We learn that it's a research and development station that's been housing hundreds upon hundreds of aliens. What could go wrong? This feeling of anxiety that the movie gives us is actually pretty great. The music played a huge part in this and was by far my favorite part of the film. The composer is Benjamin Wallfisch, who also created music for Hidden Figures, It, Blade Runner 2049, and It Chapter 2. So honestly, it's no wonder he was able to do such great emotional pulls with his music. The actual creatures for Romulus work really well for it too. The practical xenomorph suit when hatching out of the weird wall legs looked incredibly realistic. The facehuggers were slightly less scary in this one, but it was never the actual creature that was terrifying, but what they implanted in you that was the actual scary bit. Navarro getting the egg implanted in her chest, having been spoiled in trailers, was pretty frustrating. But in the scene of her shining the X-ray device through her chest and back to see that xenomorph thudding against her ribcage was beautifully gnarly. For all that violent rattling the Xeno gave her, Navarro's chest didn't just burst like I expected it to, and it just kind of squirmed its way out of there, which was somehow worse. But great. I liked that these were still early alien born of human chest burst prototypes that were still being developed. The facehuggers were so slow to implant eggs as opposed to the other films, so it gave it more of an early evolution feel. Well, except for that offspring alien that Kay birthed towards the end of the film. That thing was just an abomination. It's honestly not even worse than what we saw come from the cloning of a xenomorph queen that was derived from Ellen Ripley's DNA. I thought that newborn alien was much more fucked up looking, but there's something about the way the offspring just stood at its full 7 feet and some change height. It just stood there, menacingly. Knowing that it was birthed through the human natural means was actually just grotesque, and I loved it. Kay was absolutely an idiot for using that genome-altering serum, but it did move the plot along quite nicely, so I guess it wasn't a completely awful decision in the end. Romulus was a good alien movie. As an overall standalone movie, though, it was okay. Romulus was fairly smart in the way that it set up the plot pacing, especially with the way Ray's group ship crashed into the thrusters of the Renaissance space station, causing it to collide with the planet's rings in 40 minutes, which was the approximate amount of time left in the film. While some of that time was spent with rapt horror with the amount of xenomorphs aboard the space station, the other half of the time was spent with the altered Andy, who became increasingly difficult to want to see on screen. His new robochip made him more cold and calculating and added unnecessary drama to the already complicated mechs they were. I get it, it's a plot device. I really do get it, but wow, okay, it was really frustrating to watch. The one scene that I really liked with Andy was when he was restored to his pre-asshole chip self and was coming down from the elevator shaft to gun down a xenomorph. He says, calmly, "Get away from her, you bitch." At first, I was totally thrilled to hear that iconic line, but then I realized I was taken out of it because, again, it was said fairly calmly, and no, I don't mean that in the same way that Dumbledore asked Harry Potter in the movie adaptation very calmly, and Andy's character just had no gravitas with that line. Also, it was clearly just a fan service line thrown to us. Honestly, whatever, I was fine with it and thought it was fun, but I could see why that part would take some people out of that scene. Romulus just lacked really good characters you wanted to care about. Each individual character was just kind of there, and none had the attention-grabbing strength that Sigourney Weaver or Noomi Rapace had. I liked Rain's ability to fight for survival, but she really didn't hold a flame to the previous female lead's energy. Romulus does a great job of adding more lore to the already convoluted history of Alien. We saw that the company got incredibly close to achieving the higher human evolution Weyland so craved. However, Romulus seems to just be really good at giving us the lore rather than a story that we care to latch onto. Romulus was a really fun movie filled with great, horrible deaths caused by aliens of all sizes and incredible music and space station environments. However, it definitely lacked good narrative design with poorly motivated characters with very little personality worth remembering. But don't take that to assume that I did not like the movie. I loved it and I thought it was a good return to Alien's roots. I just wanted to see a little bit more from Romulus. Here's to hoping Romulus 2 will bring more gore and great stories.